Hello and welcome everyone to episode 1 of Mountain Talk. I'm your host, Jonny Coker. And before we jump into the Mayor Dusty Wiley interview, I just wanted to give you all a brief overview of what it is that we're doing here. This podcast in general is going to be looking at the people, the politics, the arts, and the culture of the village of Cloudcroft and surrounding areas. Of course, that means interviewing local officials like Mayor Dusty Wiley, but it also means going in depth with other stakeholders, whether they're private entities, nonprofit, state, or even federal entities like folks in the Forest Service. The plan is to be posting these interviews once a month and keeping it digestible at about 30 minutes in length. After interviewing the mayor today, I sit down with the senior editor of the Cloudcroft Reader, Hannah Dean, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the future of the podcast and some of the existential questions surrounding the show. But that's all I have for today, so thanks so much for tuning in and enjoy episode 1 of Mountain Talk. All right, and now joining us for this very special inaugural episode of Mountain Talk is Cloudcroft Mayor Dusty Wiley. Dusty, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, and just to open the floor a little bit, we have a lot of important topics to talk about, of course, but I just thought I'd open the floor to you. Can you give me a bit of your background, your story coming to Cloudcroft, and what brought you here and what brought you to the office of mayor, essentially?
Okay. Well, basically, I'm originally from Arizona, and I've lived in Arizona most of my life. But for 30-some odd years, I worked for the Agricultural Commissioner's Office in Riverside County, California. And during that time frame, for 20-some odd years, I was in upper management up to the Assistant Agricultural Commissioner position. And during that time, I learned a lot. I did budgets. I did all kinds of things. But anyways, as time went along, I missed Arizona, so bought a place back in Arizona. The last 14 years of my life, I commuted back and forth between California and Arizona, 4 days in California, 3 days in Arizona. And then I went vacations when I was in Arizona. Didn't want to go back to California, so we started coming to Mexico. And there was a tie. I used to go over and stay over by Silver City, up in the mountains there. And there's thing going back and forth between which place was better, the mountaintop that's over by Silver City or Cloudcroft. And I never heard of Cloudcroft at that time. So I decided to come here and came to Cloudcroft, and I enjoyed it and loved it. And I started coming here all the time for my vacations, every time I could get away. And I just fell in love with this town.
And you obviously have somewhat of a background in public service. What motivated you to run for the office of mayor?
Well, I've been seeing for the last 6 years or so, the village has been struggling ever since Mayor Venable had left. And then this last point, I decided I should step in and try to use some of my talents that I'd learned over the years and share that with the village and hopefully get the village on the right track.
And, this is ultimately an unpaid volunteer position. I feel like that's important for people to know. So, when you get out of bed, especially, this is you're very early in office, but what motivates you when you're looking at the future of Cloudcroft?
Just in the short period of time I've been here, just the things that already happened, getting the right people in place, getting Jenny Turry back was a wonderful thing for the village. She's going to do wonders for this village. She'll have more talent than I ever dreamed of having, getting this village running right. But anyways, besides her, getting a chief of police on staff in Roger Schoolcraft is an excellent choice, and I'm glad the trustees voted him in. They're wonderful people, and with those two in place, it's going to make my job a lot easier.
For sure. And I wanted to ask a little bit about, obviously there are some, again, like I alluded to, some major issues happening in Cloudcroft. You mentioned public safety and policing being one of them, of course, water being one of them. But before we really go into those things, I wanted to ask a little bit about the finance aspect of things. Of course, the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration froze about $3.2 million in village capital outlay projects, and that's based off of council meetings and, of course, reporting by the Cloudcroft Reader. I was just wondering, the previous administration submitted a detailed corrective action plan. Are there any updates to that?
There's no updates at this time on that plan. The money's been released, and we've gotten where we start working on it as our funds become available. But Right now, we still haven't got our finalized bar, budget adjustment yet completed. So once that's done, then we'll be able to start going into some of those grants and start working on. One of them would be the grant to buy the property that the wastewater plant's on. Mm-hmm. But we'll follow the plans that are there. We may, change them some and maybe upgrade them even better as time goes along. I'll be working with Jenny on that.
Okay. And so, for those that aren't aware, I mean, what is the plan for, in terms of being able to front money to be reimbursed by grants? Is that something that the village is able to do at this moment? Not
until we get our budget. That's when we got to see where we're at. And we won't be able to do all of it at once because, you're talking about, like you said, $3.2 million. We only have approximately $4 million in the total budget, and there's certain monies that have to be set aside you can never spend. There's also monies that you can't be spent because they go to certain, whether it's lodger's tax or whatever. So we're going to have to take them one step at a time in each of those grants and try to get them processed through. And then there's time guidelines on them too, so we're also up against that as well.
Okay, and so what money is available at this point, as far as you're aware, at least?
Just the normal operating, until I get the finalized budget from the state, the DFA.
Very good. And we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but of course, finding money to spend on quality of life services around Cloudcroft is always a challenge. What type of conversations, or are these conversations even happening within the village, of how to increase revenue, or is it mostly just about like patching up what we have right now?
Right now, we're trying to patch things up and get things moving, but we're going to have to look for the past, 15, 20 years, there hasn't been very many increases in any of the, programs, no matter what it is, whether it be your gross sales tax. We're below what, the village could be charging, compared to Alamogordo or Ritos or any other village around us. They're all maxed out up to a certain point without going to, to the vote, to the people. Same thing with property taxes, the same way. There's other things that will take a little bit more would be like the water rates, whether it be the commercial or residential, looking at it and maybe making adjustments there. There's all kinds of things that need to be looked at, but we can only do one step at a time as we're getting in here. Because remember, we're still working on stuff that hasn't been done in the past that we're still trying to catch up on, as well as moving forward.
Definitely. And you mentioned water, and that's my next topic I'd like to talk about, and something that the village is working on ongoing, obviously always a priority at any sort of council meeting. It was revealed at the January 20th meeting that the village is using around 1 million gallons of water per month, having to truck water up the mountain from Alamogordo. Can you explain what's happening to tackle this issue and the current plan to tackle this issue?
Okay, just as you may have saw just down the road from you here shortly, last night, they found a water leak. They're always looking for leaks right now. Our maintenance people, JJ and the whole crew, they're great. And they found one. So when they find one, they got to start shutting off water so they can start digging it up and getting to it. And they don't know what the water leak is until they get to it. This one here was only approximately 1 to 2 gallons per minute they were losing. And he said there's 40 gallons total. So there's still more out there, whether it be one large one or whether it be 15, 20 more small ones. And I know that he may have identified another leak today. They're working on it. So we may be shutting off water later on today. I don't know at this point until they start, narrowing down. We also have a company coming in that's going to do some satellite where they can tell where the leaks are a lot better. And once we get that, and that should be coming in beginning of next week, that should help us out start finding some leaks.
Very good. So follow up to that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that satellite company and
they have a lot better equipment, and they can pinpoint the areas a lot, better than JJ and the crew were trying to do it the hands down on the ground. So that should help us out tremendously. I think it did last year. It did quite a bit for us, and hopefully we can find some of the major leaks. Hopefully there's only one major leak and makes it easier to fix versus many small leaks.
Mm-hmm. And at the recent council meeting, there was a budgetary item approved for more water shipping
if needed, as needed.
Is that in theory going to be reimbursed through grants?
That will not be. We're in the process of getting another grant, just like we had, because that one expired, so we used it up. But while there is a drought, we can reapply, and that's what we've done. And then if that grant's approved, then we'll start. At that point, we'll start hauling water, and then it'll be paid like it was before, and it won't be coming out of the village's pockets.
And so, in a perfect world, I mean, in the next few months, where would you like to see this water issue at?
All the leaks fixed, done, completed, and start working on the next project, which is going to be, more water source. How that we get that, source of water, whether it's, maintaining the wells, better so they produce more, or finding another location to have water. So there's different options.
Right, and especially being in a drought here in southern New Mexico. I mean, for folks that have lived here a long time, this is definitely the least amount of snowpack that I've seen over the course of a 5-year period. Certainly, how much does that factor into those conversations that you're having within the village government?
Well, because of the drought, we're able to get some grants that have helped us, like the one hauling the water up and stuff. But there's also grants out there, help. You got to buy the land first. So first of all, the village has got to be able to purchase the land, and then once you have the land, then you can get grants to drill wells or somehow contain that water and move it to the location you need it to be used in. So those are grants that will be in the future. But we currently have 5 or 6 grants that we need to get through first. That we were obligated to money that is going to be difficult, but we got to get through that before we go on to the next set of grants ever.
And there's a lot of business in terms of finding the money for those grants and everything related to it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the wastewater treatment plant improvements. Is there a timeline in terms of that project and a basic outline of how the village would like to go about that project?
Well, to get into more details on that, like you're going to be asking, that'd be talking to JJ and Scott. They would have the details on what they want first, to be completed. We have grants for some of those things, so as those grants, we're able to start processing those grants, they'll let me know which order to go in.
Okay.
And obviously, the first one's going to be buying the property.
Yeah, and so, at what stage are we with even that? What would you say?
We're trying to make appointments to meet with the forestry about starting that. They've already started the process of getting some new appraisals on the property, and that type of thing.
Very good. All right. Well, I guess we can move on to talking about public safety and policing, of course. There's been a lot of turnover at the Cloudcroft Police Department, obviously. And recently, the new police chief presented a staffing plan that includes a 2.5 officer model with a sheriff school resource officer. What are your thoughts on that, and where does that all stand right now?
Again, we got to get through our budget to see what we have before we can, hire the next, officer.
Okay.
And then I know with the schools, there's a freeze on school grants right now of some sort, so they can't get their portion of it. So we won't process that and start working on that until the schools can get the grants so that might be a year away before that person would come on board. I'm not for sure what the status is on that.
It sounds a bit deadlocked, is what you're saying. And so. Have you or anyone else within the village government spoken to the school about this?
Roger Cloudcroft, our chief, has, and so he's working directly with them.
Okay. So, in your mind, where again, obviously this is a ways out, but where would you like to see the Cloudcroft Police Department in a year or two in terms of just some stability and what you would like that department to look like?
I think it should have between 2.5 to 3.5 officers max. Right off the bat, we'll probably end up with, within the next year, probably just the chief and an officer. I'm not for sure until, I get the budget and I see where we're at and get past, bills paid and go forward.
Right. And it seems a lot of, especially you're so early in the tenure here, and a lot of, difficulties with the village government have to deal with a lot of these issues that have just been sort of, kick the can down the road, essentially. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and about government transparency in general. That's something that you campaigned on. You want to make sure that the village is posting meeting minutes, streaming everything online. So what steps have you taken so far to increase transparency and to fulfill those goals? Well,
I think as you've probably seen, whether it be on Facebook or whether it be on our webpage, we've been getting all the meetings posted on time, well in advance. I've been posting like when our Facebook Live didn't work. The next day, got it fixed. Had the volunteers come back in with me, worked on it. We did a test, and you can go on Facebook and see it worked great. The sound sounded perfect on it. So it should go live next time and work great. What we did was, as Grover Trask and was working on stuff, he got everything working great, but it somehow disconnected from live, Facebook Live. So we got that reconnected, and there's a certain order you got to do. It's a little bit technical for me anyways. But anyways, there's ways of getting it done, and it's working. We got to turn things on a certain direction, in certain ways.
And being at the council meeting, I think everyone saw, essentially, I thought it was streaming. I think everyone thought it was streaming, and then by the time it ended...
Yeah, they said it had not.
Right. And so, and I think it's important to note that a lot of these folks working on those things are also volunteers.
Yes.
So, but you think that by the next council meeting or village government meeting in general, you think that should be ironed out?
Yeah, that's why we did that test run yesterday to make sure everything's working.
Very good. And
there will be minutes posted here shortly. That were approved at the last meeting, so they'll be going upline. Which I don't know if there's ever been minutes in the past past year, anyways.
And so where will those be posted ultimately?
On Facebook and on the village website as well.
Village website and Facebook. Very good. And in terms of regular financial reporting, is there any way or any thoughts about keeping folks up to date with that aspect of village government?
No, I think just, basically, I feel like I have an open door policy. They can call me at any point in time. I have a village mayor phone, and I think my personal cell phone's out there enough on the web that anytime anybody wants to call me about concern, they can talk to me. As I've gotten busy, sometimes I can't answer the phone right away, but I'm always there I'll get back with them and answer their questions as best I can.
And I wanted to ask a little bit about, obviously this has been a tumultuous time for the village government, and there has been a lot of turnover at many positions, not just police, but, other important positions when it comes to just effectively running a government. So, I wanted to ask you about that and how are you going to move forward ensuring that there is some stability within Cloudcroft's government?
I think it's already started, with the hiring of Jenny. She'll be overseeing the village, clerical staff. She's a wonderful person. Roger Cloudcroft, the chief of police there, he's a wonderful person. He'll be able to work and maintain his staff. It's the department heads you have surrounded around you that make the mayor.
One of the things that actually stood out to me based on Hannah's reporting as well is this discussion about clarifying job descriptions and responsibilities in the police department. So, how does that internal planning happen, and how can the village government ensure that departmental goals are clearly identified and publicly available? Okay,
right. As we're currently talking, our legal's going over the SOPs and the job description of the chief of police. Also, that will be happening on the village side as well. And to me, the at-will positions are not necessary. They're at will. The chief of police job description is not necessary. The village clerk is not. Job descriptions aren't really necessary in my opinion because they're at will. You talk to them, you work with them. They know what you want, and they know what their expectations are. Where you need the job descriptions are for the people that are working underneath them, so they have their clear expectations. So when they're hired, they know that they're getting hired at this salary. They're getting hired, it starts here and ends here after 20 years. So they know that they have somewhere to go. The way it's been, looking at the stuff for the past 20 years, you get hired at this rate, you're there forever unless you're bold enough to go ask the mayor or somebody for a pay raise. There needs to be something so they have goals that they can work towards, and then also have the procedures that they need to follow and know what their expectations are. So that's where I want to get next is more onto that level in the field workers. Okay. So they understand what their expectations are, and then things will roll from there and do well.
Sure. And moving forward, and this kind of links into the water and in terms of your long-term goal as a mayor, where would you like to see Cloudcroft's future growth happening in terms of tourism and in terms of, again, building on what is already here?
Well, basically Cloudcroft for the village limits, other than going out by the ski resort, is basically, taken up. I mean, there's not a whole lot of development that can happen within, the village limits here, but you always have to have some development or else the town, dies. Not for sure where you're going with the question, but yes, we do need development. Before you go with development, though, you need to get your water and your wastewater situation corrected.
Well, in terms of, I guess where I'm going with the question is, what strategies will you use to balance tourists' impact with the residents' quality of life here, and how do you balance? How do you balance these stakeholders in the village?
Well, the village needs the tourism, because without the tourism, you don't have the tax base and everything else to do everything that the village needs to have done within the village, whether it be the maintaining the water lines, the sewer lines, on and on and on. So you do need the tourists. Without the tourists, the town would die.
Mm-hmm. And so, I guess in terms of a long-term plan, where do you see the village in 2-3 years, or by the end of your tenure even? What are your main goals that you'd like to see?
Within the next 2 years, I'd like to see the wastewater plant on its way to being fixed, whatever it may be. It probably may not be fixed by that date, but it's on on its way to being there. Same thing with our water. We may not be there quite there within 2 years, but at least we have property somewhere. We're starting to drill the well or whatever, and trying to strategize how we're going to get that water to the village after that, whether we're trucking it ourselves. Because when you start putting in water lines, especially if you go to a different aquifer, it's going to cost a lot of money to put water lines in. So we may be just hauling water for ourselves. I'm not for sure on that, how that's going to work. I'd have to get with JJ more, some of the technical people. But anyways.
This might be the first time folks see you speak in a capacity like this and get to learn to know you. So what is your message to those folks? What is your message to the village of Cloudcroft about where we are now and where you would like to see us?
Well, I think we're on a good track now. I think within the next 2 years, you're going to see a big turnaround within the village. I think you're going to see a lot of positive. You're going to see a lot of growth within, even with our staff. You're going to start getting a knowledge base back with, again, I'll go back to Jenny, with Jenny and her knowledge, and she's sharing it with the other new hires that we currently have, Sylvia and Ashley. They're new. They've only been here since sometime in July, and they're still trying to learn their job, and nobody was here to train them. Now they have somebody here to train her, to train each of them. And that's going to be, it's going to be wonderful, because once they really know what to do in their job, they just sort of been fumbling around for the past 6 months, trying to learn, or 8 months, however long they've been here now, trying to learn what they're supposed to be doing. Now they'll have direction. So I think the same thing will happen with the chief of police. I think once we get new chiefs coming, or new officers coming in, they're not going to be brand new off the street. They're going to be probably seasoned officers. They're maybe winding down their career, or not for sure exactly, but they will know how to do the job, and then they'll know what Roger's direction is, and which is going to be basically my direction. How everything's going to be run in the village.
I see. Well, I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate you coming in for this interview. So thanks so much. I can't say I'm really happy with how this conversation has gone, and I appreciate you coming in.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Mountain Talk, presented by the Cloudcroft Reader. I'm your host, Jonny Coker. I'm joined by senior editor of the Cloudcroft Reader and the Mountain Monthly, Hannah Dean. Thanks for being here, Hannah.
Thank you.
And we just wanted to talk a little bit, because of course we have an interview with newly elected Mayor Dusty Wiley. But before we really get into that, we wanted to talk about our goals for this podcast and what it is that we're doing here. So essentially, we're just trying to expand the amount of content that the Reader has to go on, and expand our local news footprint essentially in the area to help keep folks more informed. I mean, what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing to read an article where we're distilling, a 2-hour village meeting down to a few notes. It's another to see it from the horse's mouth, to see someone, the passion with which they talk about something, or maybe their discomfort with a certain issue. And so I think having this audio visual component of a podcast gives a different kind of news than what we're consuming in Cloudcroft.
Yeah.
And so I think it brings something just new to the table.
Definitely. And something about, not all of these interviews are necessarily going to be political interviews. I think there's definitely a different vibe of having a public official in front of you and having questions that you want to ask versus just someone or an artist from the community that you can sort of vibe with and just have a conversation with. And I think that's what sets this interview apart from maybe what we'll see in the future. Because like I said, again, talking to public officials, there's certain line items that you have to hit, and it's a little bit more of a formal interview. And I think moving forward, we might have more of those informal types of interviews. But I mean, as the senior editor of The Reader, I mean, how would you like to see this thing moving forward?
Gosh, I think getting everybody who's an elected official on here at some point just to talk to their community would be really important, especially for stakeholders that maybe can't be at the village meeting. Maybe they're going through chemo, maybe, there's a whole host of reasons people can't be physically present. And it's nice to see somebody, hear from them. And it's a different format. You're kind of removing that table and gavel, and it's a little more egalitarian in that way. And so I think, our elected officials, but there's all these different entities in the area that compose Cloudcroft. We have the village government, we have the schools, we have the Forest Service, we have the village. Just at large, we have seasonals, locals, tourists. So we have just kind of all these different players on the field. And so I think pulling from all of those different arenas would be really interesting just to hear from folks.
Definitely. And expanding that local news footprint. Something I forgot to bring up in the Dusty interview was how some of our U.S. representatives, U.S. senators, have heard about some of the issues, including the water issue that Cloudcroft is having through local reporting, through the Cloudcroft Reader. So I think that just goes to show how important the work it is that you're doing is, and how much more that could be done in terms of that reach for sure.
Yeah.
And I think having Dusty, and even for me, I mean, I had never sat down and spoken with him before, and I think a lot of people will. I don't think, a lot of the stakeholders in the community have had that opportunity. So having the opportunity to do that and have it on camera and be able to, show people who he really is and his take on everything within the village government and beyond. I just thought it was really interesting and really valuable. So first of all, thank you for helping produce this, and I'm excited about the journey moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you do with it. I want to know who your dream guest is or what's cooking.
Oh man, there's a lot of, like you said, there's so many stakeholders and so many folks that we can talk to as it relates to some of what the village of Cloudcroft is facing, both on the good side and on the bad side. So not necessarily bad, but there are problems facing this village. So I think. Yeah, the world's our oyster right now, I think, and I appreciate you helping me out with this, and I'm excited to move forward.
Me too.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's all for the first episode of Mountain Talk. Thanks everyone for watching. Keep an eye out for the next episode. Hopefully, we'll have something for you. So take care.